Forget the sword and shield. Alexander the Great wasn't just a military genius, he was a master of the human mind. Imagine a leader who could conquer not just lands, but the very thoughts and fears of his enemies. How did he do it? What were the dark psychological secrets that fueled his meteoric rise to build one of history's most colossal empires? Get ready to have your perception of power completely shattered. Section 2. Born into intrigue, the seeds of psychological dominance. Our story begins in Macedonia, where young Alexander's cradle was rocked by the ambitions of his father, King Philip II. But this wasn't your average royal upbringing. Picture a court teeming with power plays and political backstabbing. This intense environment wasn't just observed by Alexander, it forged his very mentality. He witnessed firsthand the brutal effectiveness of psychological manipulation, lessons etched deep within his young mind. And then came Aristotle. Section 3. The Philosopher Kingmaker, mastering the art of persuasion. Forget dusty old textbooks. Under the tutelage of the great Aristotle, Alexander wasn't just learning about philosophy, he was dissecting the very essence of human nature. Imagine being taught the art of persuasion, the levers of power, the intricate workings of the human psyche. Aristotle equipped Alexander with the ultimate weapon, the ability to see beyond brute force and understand the deepest desires and fears of men. This wasn't just knowledge, it was power waiting to be unleashed. Section 4. Mother's influence, the fuel of divine ambition. But Aristotle wasn't the only architect of Alexander's formidable mind. Enter Olympias, his mother, a woman of fierce ambition and ruthless political cunning. She whispered tales of divine lineage into young Alexander's ear, planting the seed of his exceptional destiny. This wasn't just a mother's pride, it was a deliberate psychological strategy that instilled in Alexander an unshakable sense of entitlement and a burning desire to eclipse even his legendary father. Section 5. Hardened by rivalry, the crucible of early lessons. Alexander's childhood wasn't all royal feasts and philosophical debates. Imagine navigating a viper's nest of court rivalries, constantly needing to read intentions and detect deceit. These early, often brutal lessons weren't just character building, they sharpened his psychological acumen to a razor's edge. He learned to anticipate betrayal, to understand the delicate psychological foundations of power, skills that would soon be tested on a global scale. Section 6. The Mythmaker, weaponizing perception. Alexander understood a fundamental truth. Power is as much about what people believe as what is real. Picture him carefully crafting his image, weaving tales of divine heritage, claiming descent from heroes like Achilles and Hercules. This wasn't just vanity, it was psychological warfare on a grand scale. Imagine the fear and awe these stories instilled in both friend and foe. Cities surrendered without a fight, choosing submission over facing a leader they believed was touched by the gods. His myth became his most potent weapon. Section 7. Turning the tide, psychological warfare in battle. Now let's talk battles. Imagine Alexander facing Persian armies that dwarfed his own. But he didn't just rely on superior tactics, he weaponized their minds. Picture him strategically amplifying his victories, spreading tales of invincibility and ruthlessness, causing sheer panic to rip through enemy ranks. At the Battle of Issus, he didn't just aim for the army, he went straight for King Darius, creating chaos that sent a larger force into a psychological meltdown. And at Gaugamela, surprise maneuvers and sheer psychological intimidation shattered the Persian might despite their overwhelming numbers. Section 8. Winning hearts and minds, the Egyptian gambit. Egypt presented a different challenge, but Alexander, the master psychologist, was ready. Imagine him seamlessly integrating into Egyptian culture, portraying himself as the son of their chief deity, Amun. This wasn't just a political move, it was a stroke of psychological genius. He secured not just military victory, but religious acceptance, solidifying his rule by winning the hearts and minds of the Egyptian people through carefully orchestrated rituals and public appearances. Even against the fierce resistance of King Porus in India, Alexander's psychological prowess shone through. Picture this. After a brutal and hard-fought victory, Alexander didn't humiliate his adversary. He treated Porus with honor, allowing him to maintain his position. This wasn't just an act of kindness, it was a calculated psychological tactic that fostered goodwill and made governing newly conquered territories far easier than through brute force alone. Section 10. Balancing terror and mercy. On the battlefield, Alexander wielded fear like a finely tuned instrument. Imagine the chilling effect of his ruthlessness. The complete annihilation of cities like Tyre and Thebes served as stark psychological warnings. But this wasn't just mindless destruction. Picture him balancing this terror with lavish rewards for cities that willingly submitted. This created a clear psychological framework. Defy him, face utter ruin, submit and prosper. He controlled populations' minds before he even controlled their lands. Section 11. Forging unbreakable loyalty. Alexander wasn't just a distant commander, he was in the trenches with his men. Picture him sharing their hardships, refusing special treatment even in the harshest conditions. This wasn't just good leadership, it was masterful emotional manipulation. He forged unbreakable bonds of loyalty, transforming ordinary soldiers into fiercely devoted warriors, willing to follow him to the ends of the earth simply because he asked it. Section 12. When the mind turns inward. But the dark psychology Alexander wielded eventually turned inward. Imagine the paranoia and suspicion that crept in with absolute power. His closest companions, the men who had been with him from the start, became targets of his fear. Trusted generals and advisors were executed, his judgment clouded by the very tactics he had used so effectively. The master manipulator became a victim of his own mind. Section 13. The unraveling. Alexander's sudden death at just 32 unleashed chaos. Without his iron psychological grip, his vast empire fractured as his generals turned on each other. This dramatic collapse reveals a crucial truth. Empires built solely on fear and manipulation, while powerful, are inherently unstable. The seeds of their destruction are sown within their very foundations. Section 14. Minds over matter. Alexander the Great's legacy isn't just about conquered lands, it's about the power of the human mind. His genius, and perhaps his downfall, lay in his profound understanding of psychology. His life serves as a powerful reminder. Empires built by fear and manipulation may rise quickly, but true strength lies in something far more profound. As Lao Tzu wisely said, to conquer others is power. To conquer oneself is strength. Did this deep dive into the psychological tactics of Alexander the Great blow your mind? Subscribe for more fascinating insights into the hidden psychology of history's greatest figures. Let us know in the comments what other historical minds you'd like us to explore.